Back at the turn of the 20th century, over 100,000 Filipinos crossed oceans to reach Hawaii's sugar plantations. The work was punishing, the pay painfully low, but in their kitchens, something remarkable unfolded. Amid the grind of survival, food became hope simmering in a pot. Adobo bubbling next to cabbage from garden plots, pancit noodles stretched across picnic tables. These weren't just meals, they were messages from home, transformed into strength. Some of these traditional dishes disappeared over time. Others sunk deep into Hawaii's cultural roots, unknown by name but rich with legacy. And a few? They hold secrets that are only now being rediscovered. Today, we revisit 25 unforgettable Filipino plantation foods, told through stories of determination, warmth, and flavor. Stay with us, because the final dish in this list carries more than taste. It holds a truth few have ever heard. 1. Rice and pork guisantes. Every meal on the plantation had a job to do, not just to fill the belly, but to lift the spirit. And rice with pork guisantes did exactly that. Imagine tender pork simmered in a savory tomato sauce, dotted with the surprise of soft green peas, spooned over a generous heap of white rice. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt like a celebration. Look deeper, and this dish reveals a quiet ingenuity. Workers made do with pork scraps and bones, the parts nobody else wanted. In plantation stores, canned vegetables like peas and tomatoes were affordable and shelf-stable. And rice? It was the anchor of every Filipino meal. These ingredients, humble on their own, came together to create comfort that workers could count on. After grueling days under the Hawaiian sun, workers gathered, bowls in hand, drawn by the scent of garlic and tomato creeping through the air. Every bite echoed memories of distant fiestas and food shared with family back home. Over time, this dish left the fields and entered local kitchens, becoming a beloved guest at potlucks and celebrations. Generations later, the same rice and pork combination is still cooking on stovetops across the islands, quietly honoring the spirit, grit, and flavor that shaped Hawaii's culinary soul. 2. Adobo chicken and rice. If there was one dish that beat stronger than any in the hearts of Filipino plantation workers, it was adobo chicken with rice. Vinegar, garlic, soy sauce, peppercorns, simple ingredients. Yet when simmered together, they created something unforgettable. The chicken would soak up every flavor until the sauce turned deep, tangy, and bold. Ladled over fragrant white rice, it turned sweat and soreness into comfort and calm. But adobo didn't just taste remarkable, it kept people alive. Before refrigeration, vinegar and garlic acted as natural preservatives, keeping meat safe even hours into a hot workday. A pot of adobo could last all week, nourishing families one spoonful at a time. When the sharp aroma drifted from makeshift kitchens at night, it was a signal of dinner, of rest, and of something familiar. For Filipinos far from home, each bite brought back childhood memories, mother's hands, and hometown feasts. Adobo didn't fade with time. It evolved, and today it thrives across Hawaii, still comforting, still sustaining, still whispering stories of those who came before and fed both body and spirit. 3. Simon wasn't just a dish. It was a symbol of what happened when cultures collided and cooked together. Born on Hawaii's plantations, Simon blended history right into the broth. Think soft noodles swirling in a light, savory soup, maybe a few slices of leftover meat, a scattering of green onions, or fish cake if you were lucky. Filipino workers brought with them a love for noodles, but they weren't alone. Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese, Hawaiian, all these communities added their influence. Simon became a shared pot, one that embraced everyone at the table and brought warmth after endless hours in the fields. The noodles stretched far, feeding many from little. The broth soothed muscles and bones pushed to their limits. In this humble bowl, nothing was wasted, and nothing was single origin. It was unity in a ladle. From camp kitchens, Simon stretched its reach across the islands. Today, you'll still find it in diners, food stalls, and home kitchens alike. A dish created from necessity, flavored by cooperation, and carried by the stories of many. Every spoonful tells Hawaii's history, one slurp at a time. 4. Lumpia. If adobo was the kitchen's soul, Lumpia was its joy. Golden, crunchy, and crisp with each bite, these little rolls wrapped more than just vegetables or pork. They wrapped celebration, kinship, and love. Sometimes they were filled with meat and vegetables. Other times, just cabbage or onion stretched as far as they could go. No matter the filling, lumpia made ordinary nights special. On plantations, lumpia came out for birthdays, weekends, and payday splurges. Families gathered with wrappers on the table, kids helping with tiny fingers to fold them over, while adults manned smoky stoves. The smell of garlic and sizzling oil traveled across camps, drawing neighbors near. What made lumpia magic was its flexibility. Whatever leftovers were around became the filling. Nothing wasted, everything shared. That thrift never stopped it from feeling festive. Even now, lumpia brings people to the table. One crunchy bite still delivers the same joy it did a century ago. Sharing hands, laughter, and pride passed down through generations. On plantations, it was a symbol of ingenuity and community. Today, it's a legacy still hot and crispy in every bite. 5. Fried rice with garlic and bits of pork or fish. Nothing was ever tossed on the plantations. Not when hard labor demanded every bite count. Fried rice became the master of reinvention. Yesterday's rice, flash fried in garlic and oil. In went scraps of pork, maybe dried fish, maybe both. A splash of soy sauce, a bit of salt, and just like that, a new meal was born from what might have been forgotten. It wasn't just practical, it felt like comfort. The pop of garlic in hot oil, the sizzle of heat meeting cold rice, the savory surprise of pork or fish hidden in the grains. Workers came home from brutal fieldwork hungry, and this dish answered the call. More than that, fried rice was a cultural chameleon, blending Filipino flavors with Chinese stir-fries and Hawaiian influence. It lived in every kitchen and crossed every table, feeding not just families, but friendships. Today you'll still find it across the islands, tucked into plate lunches or steaming out of backyard walks. It tells the same story, of survival, of resourcefulness, of how a few leftovers and a lot of heart could stretch food and family a little further. 6. Boiled rice and stewed vegetables in fish sauce. There was a kind of grace in simplicity. Boiled rice with stewed vegetables and fish sauce didn't need meat to mean something. It was warm, humble, and deeply nourishing. A pot filled with greens like long beans, squash, or kangkong simmered in the bold saltiness of patis or bagoong, then ladled over white rice. It was survival, yes, but also comfort. For many plantation families, meat was too expensive to eat daily, so vegetables became the center of the plate. Workers tended gardens beside their cramped homes, trading and sharing harvests. A dash of fish sauce transformed these crops from plain to deeply flavored, something that tugged on memory. It wasn't flashy, but this dish filled more than stomachs. It pulled people together. After long shifts cutting sugarcane, workers gathered for bowls of this stew, hot and healing. These meals echoed traditions from the Philippines, where vegetables were always stretched to feed many. Here in Hawaii, they reminded migrants that resilience didn't require extravagance, only a pot, some greens, and the flavor of home. Even today, similar stews bubble in island kitchens, quiet, proud, and rooted. 7. Fried fish with vinegar dip. Some aromas had the power to stop a tired worker mid-step, and the scent of fried fish crackling in a pan was one of them. On the plantation camps, this was everyday magic. Small fish like sardines or mackerel, salted and fried until golden, their skin crisp and shimmering. Always served with rice, always alongside a simple but powerful vinegar dip, sometimes with chili, sometimes with garlic, sharp enough to cut through everything. It didn't matter if you had little. This meal made folks feel full. In the Philippines, fried fish was a staple in nearly every corner of the islands. In Hawaii, it became both refuge and ritual, one of the few comforts that looked and tasted just like home. The sound of oil snapping, the scent floating through open windows, the tang of vinegar on the tongue. Even in a shack built from tin or worn wood, you could feel rich if the plate was hot and the rice was ready. More than just food, fried fish was identity. Across oceans, through hardship, it reminded every Filipino worker of what they still carried with them. Memory, resilience, and flavor. 8. Siopao or manapua, Sundays or paydays, meant one thing for many plantation workers: a small indulgence. That indulgence was siopao, known across Hawaii as manapua, soft, fluffy steamed buns, warm enough to sink your fingers into, hiding savory sweet treasures inside: pork, chicken, sometimes a mixture of both. For just a few coins, it was a meal in your hands. These buns weren't purely Filipino. They were part of a shared cultural immigration. Chinese workers brought them first, but Filipinos embraced them wholeheartedly. Soon, vendors with woven baskets walked camp alleys, steam rising as they popped open the lids to sell the freshest batch. Manapua delivered balance, the bun to fill, the meat to nourish, the sweetness to comfort. Kids lit up when they saw them. Adults relied on them when there wasn't time to cook after long shifts. Over the years, manapua made its way from plantation paths to neighborhood bakeries, still wrapped in nostalgia and soft dough. Every bite today is a quiet echo of long ago Sundays, shared coins, and the joy of biting into something warm against the coldness of hard labor. 9. Arroz caldo. When pain, fatigue, or illness swept through the camps, there was one dish everyone turned to for healing: arroz caldo. A thick rice porridge, gently simmered with garlic, ginger, and a few scraps of chicken, this dish wasn't just a meal. It was care in a bowl. The rice swelled with thyme and water, becoming soft and hearty. Garlic added depth. Ginger warmed tired bodies. A squeeze of calamansi, if you had it, added brightness. It didn't need much meat, just enough to fortify the broth with something more than flavor. Parents gave it to sick children when the nights grew cold. Workers ladled it out after long days, when energy barely whispered through their bones. It was food, but also memory of mothers, Lola's kitchen, and quiet, rainy mornings back in the Philippines. In Hawaii, it carried over unchanged and yet beloved all over again. Even today, arroz caldo simmers on island stoves, bringing comfort across generations. Because long after hunger leaves, people still remember how it felt to be cared for, and this dish made sure they did. 10. Boiled sweet potato and salted fish flakes. Not every meal on the plantation was hearty. Some were built from what could be grown, found, or stretched. Boiled sweet potatoes topped with salted fish flakes was one of those quiet meals, simple, filling, and completely rooted in survival. Sweet potatoes loved Hawaii's soil. They grew where rice sometimes couldn't. Workers would boil them until tender, slice them open, then sprinkle shreds of dried fish on top. The saltiness balanced the natural sweetness, turning just two ingredients into something deeply satisfying. This wasn't a feast, but it never pretended to be. It was fast, reliable, and didn't require firewood for long cooking hours. At the end of the day, weary hands and sore backs needed just this kind of fuel. Easy to prepare, gentle on the body. Far from extravagance, this dish whispered of rural kitchens and countryside days back in the homeland, where similar meals had sustained generations. Even here, thousands of miles away, it served as proof that food didn't have to be grand to reaffirm dignity. In every forkful, taste and endurance walked hand in hand. 11. Fish and vegetable soup. After endless hours cutting cane in rain or sun, few things comforted quite like fish and vegetable soup. Light yet filling, it pulled together scraps from daily life. Small local fish from streams or markets. Leafy greens from garden plots, maybe a squash or onions thrown in. Broth wasn't about richness, it was about warmth. Ginger or fish sauce added depth to water, giving soul to simplicity. When poured hot over a bowl of rice, it became more than nourishment. It became relief. This was communal cooking at heart. One worker brought fish, another added vegetables, and soon a single pot fed an entire circle of tired hands and hungry mouths. It was food born from pooling, effort, resources, and care. The flavor was mild, but the impact ran deep. People sat shoulder to shoulder, eating slowly, sharing stories, finding in each other a small sense of home. Today, this same soup lives on, still in homes, still on quiet dinner tables, reminding us that some of the most enduring meals are the ones we made by making do. 12. Stewed pork belly with vinegar and garlic. When fatty pork belly showed up in plantation camp kitchens, it usually came cheap, and in Filipino households, that was far from a problem. It was pure opportunity. Stewed in vinegar, garlic, soy sauce, and pepper, those thick cuts transformed into something remarkable, tender, rich, and glossy with deep flavor. The fat melted into the sauce, giving it body. The vinegar kept it safe to eat without refrigeration. The garlic turned every bite into something to savor. Over hot rice, it became more than a meal. It became reward for surviving another hard day in the fields. This version of adobo focused on meatiness and patience. Cooking it meant time, something valuable in homes run on labor and exhaustion. But once ready, it always drew people to the table. There they laughed, dipped bites into the sauce, and took pride in turning the least desirable cut into something indulgent. Even now, that same scent, vinegar and garlic dancing in a pan, floats through island kitchens. It continues to bind generations to the grit and grace of those who cooked with purpose and pride. 13. Rice with stir-fried greens. On the plantations, meat was a rare luxury. But greens were everything. Rice with stir-fried vegetables, often morning glory, long beans, or whatever could be grown in small camp gardens, became a daily staple. Fast to cook, full of freshness, and anchored by garlic and a splash of fish sauce. This simple pairing brought life to every plate. After hours in the cane fields, workers returned not just to homes, but to gardens, tiny plots stitched into the camp's worn soil. These weren't hobbies, they were lifelines. In a few handfuls of greens, families found a meal they could trust. A hot wok, scented oil, greens wilting just enough to shine. Ladled over rice, it wasn't fancy, but it was familiar. It filled stomachs and pulled people around the table. For many, this dish represented dignity. It proved that flavor didn't depend on meat or money, just creativity, love, and a deep knowledge of how to make the most from little. The tradition lives on unchanged, on island tables where the legacy of garden-grown resilience still blooms daily. 14. Steamed rice cakes with coconut and banana. Not every moment on the plantation was about endurance. Sometimes it was about sweetness, like the soft, chewy joy of steamed rice cakes made from coconut, banana, and ground rice. They didn't need frosting or flair, just warmth, steam, and a little tradition. These treats were often made on rest days or special Sundays. Bananas grew well in Hawaii's soil. Coconuts hung heavy from nearby palms. With just a few local ingredients, workers recreated merienda moments from back home. The preparation was communal. Rice soaked and ground into batter, bananas mashed in, coconuts scraped by hand. It wasn't rushed. Kids waited nearby, the scent of steaming cakes teasing them long before the tins came off the stove. These desserts weren't about indulgence. They were about connecting, with home, with each other, with joy, even in small portions. Even today, similar rice cakes appear in island kitchens and Filipino bakeries. Soft, simple, filled with memory. Because while the plantation life was marked by hardship, these little cakes proved that comfort and sweetness could still rise from steam and shared stories. 15. Mixed vegetable stew with coconut milk. There was one pot that felt like an embrace at the end of a long day. Mixed vegetable stew simmered in rich coconut milk. Squash, eggplant, long beans, maybe some tender greens, all stewed slowly with garlic, onions, and a splash of fish sauce or bagoong. Creamy, lightly salty, and always comforting. Coconuts weren't just abundant in Hawaii, they were essential. Filipino cooks leaned into them early on, just as they had back home. The coconut milk softened the vegetables, thickened the stew, turned scarcity into satisfaction. It didn't need meat to feel complete. Just a pot large enough to share, and rice to catch each spoonful. On warm evenings, neighbors would stop by with empty bowls and full conversation, filling their homes with the scent of coconut and garlic. Even now, this dish endures. Still slow-cooked on Sundays. Still served to family and friends when comfort is needed most. It's a reminder that from simple vegetables and a splash of coconut, a meal can bloom, one that hugs the soul just as tightly as it fills the stomach. 16. Coconut fish stew. Few dishes captured the spirit of home like coconut fish stew. Plantation workers, often short on money, turned to what the ocean gave freely: small fish like mackerel, paired with coconut milk, ginger, and garlic. A hint of chili for heat. The result? A rich, gentle warmth that rested over hot rice like comfort itself. Filipinos brought their instinct for flavor halfway across the world. On Hawaiian soil, they found the same gifts: fresh fish and coconuts thick with cream. The combination was second nature. The stew calmed the body and revived the spirit. In tight camp kitchens, the scent of coconut mingling with fish and garlic pulled neighbors close. Workers didn't need many ingredients, just knowledge, time, and someone to eat with. Today, this recipe still lingers, sometimes tweaked, but always familiar. Every household version whispers the same thing: remember where you're from. In each bite was the Pacific's salt, the Philippines' memory, and Hawaii's embrace. For generations, this stew has reminded families that even in a foreign land, home could still simmer in a single, humble pot. And 17, bagoong fried rice. When times got tight on the plantations, flavor had to work overtime. That's where bagoong fried rice came in, loud, bold, and deeply unforgettable. Day-old rice hit the hot pan with garlic and onions. Then came bagoong, the pungent Filipino fermented fish paste that turned dull into delicious. Some added bits of pork or egg if they were lucky. But even without them, bagoong was enough. Its salty funk clung to every grain, transforming everything it touched. To outsiders, the smell might have been off-putting. But to Filipino workers, it was comfort, a sense of home wrapped in steam. In dimly lit kitchens, full pans of this rice fed entire bunkhouses. It was more than food. It was pride. A reminder that what others discarded or turned their noses at, they turned into tradition. And richness wasn't in the cost. It was in the confidence. That same scent still wafts from island kitchens today. Because long after the last cane field cooled, bagoong fried rice stayed bold. It proved flavor isn't always pretty, but it's powerful. And it lasts. Bidding pancit. When it came to feeding many from little, pancit always delivered. Long, golden noodles stir-fried with soy sauce, garlic, onions, and whatever vegetables were available, sometimes pork or chicken when money allowed. It was bright, hearty, and surprisingly stretching. Pancit wasn't just dinner, it was a declaration. On birthdays, holidays, or payday, someone in the camp would pull out a pan, get the oil hot, and sizzle the first strands. Soon neighbors appeared, drawn in by aroma and tradition. Because pancit meant more than food, it meant an occasion. In Filipino culture, long noodles symbolize long life. So even in the middle of hardship, these slender threads carried hope. They brought color and joy to tough days, satisfying not only hunger, but the longing for celebration. Kids slurped, elders smiled, and the stories came out around the table. Feeding many on little felt like magic, and that magic stuck. Today, pancit is still found in homes and parties across Hawaii, served with the same spirit. Because across generations, the message stayed clear. Stretch your noodles, stretch your joy, stretch your life. 19. Rice with pork scraps, boiled in vinegar and soy. On sugar plantations. Nothing was thrown away, especially not pork scraps. Bones, trimmings, fatty chunks. Filipino workers took what little they were given and boiled it down in vinegar, soy, garlic, and pepper. What they created was close to adobo, rich in flavor, and often more powerful in meaning. This wasn't about feasting. It was about surviving with flavor. The acidity of vinegar preserved the meat, extending its life and safety in the hot, humid climate. The sauce soaked into rice like dark gold, salty, sour, and deeply satisfying. To others, it might have looked like leftovers. But for these workers, it was dinner, family, and memory on each plate. A dish that turned cast-offs into nourishment, a reminder that what they lacked in money, they made up for in skill. At the end of the day, families gathered around one pot, sharing what they had and stretching it with rice. This humble bowl was proof of ingenuity. Even scraps held value when patience, tradition, and hope seasoned the pot. That belief lives on, in kitchens where flavor still overcomes hardship. 20. Rice with shellfish or clam stew in tomato base, Hawaii's shores gave what stores couldn't: clams, mussels, tiny shellfish. For Filipino workers missing home and short on cash, these coastal treasures became stew, simmered in tomato, garlic, and onion, then poured hot over rice. Each spoonful was a wave of briny, familiar comfort. With nothing more than a bucket and an hour, families could gather enough seafood to feed many. The tomato base, often from canned goods, added brightness and stretch. Garlic deepened the flavor. The end result? A pot that tasted like the ocean and home at once. Camp gardens offered extra vegetables, maybe squash, maybe greens. Into the broth they went, thickening it, grounding it. The smell of clams cooking drifted out of camp kitchens, calling out to others, like Sundays back in Philippine fishing villages. On days off, these stews became communal. Adults cooked. Kids carried bowls. Neighbors shared. In hardship, it was hard to hold ceremonies, but food became the ceremony. That connection hasn't faded. Even now, the blend of tomatoes and seaside catch still connects islands, both Pacific ones, and the hands that labored on their shores. 21. Boiled taro, or yam and rice with fish or pork bits. Before rice could be counted on, plantation meals leaned on what local soil gave easily: taro and yam. These hardy roots, boiled until soft and starchy, became the foundation. Paired with salted fish shreds or pork scraps and a side of rice when possible, the dish kept weary bodies moving through another long day. Taro echoed gabi from back home, while yam reminded many of countryside meals in the Philippines. Though simple, it fed plenty and filled deep. Workers mashed chunks into rice or ate them solo with salt or flakes of dried fish. Cheap, local, and grown easily, these foods weren't just backup, they became bridges between cultures. While some crops were unfamiliar, Filipinos adopted, adapted, and made them their own. At mealtime, there was often silence, and then stories. One bite unlocked memories of island hillsides, family farms, hearthside cooking. It wasn't about richness. It was about roots, kept alive even when planted on foreign ground. Today, you'll still see taro on island menus. Humble, hearty, and grateful, just like the generations that once relied on its strength. 22. Pork and vegetable stir. A few scraps of pork could go a long way, especially when vegetables were added. On the plantations, cooks mastered the pork and vegetable stir. Pork browned in a pan with garlic and vinegar, joined quickly by beans, cabbage, or squash. It was quick, it was practical, and it always hit home. Think of it like a lighter version of adobo, faster, fresher, and perfect when meat was scarce. The tang of vinegar woke up the vegetables. Soy sauce brought depth. It wasn't flashy, but it was full of flavor and fast enough to hit the table before the sun fully set. This dish was born out of daily necessity, but left behind something lasting. It carried balance: meat for strength, vegetables for substance, rice for soul. Hot, sour, savory, all in a single bite. At dinner, families passed around bowls, each serving a mix that was never quite the same, but always deeply Filipino. To eat it was to adapt, to survive, to thrive anyway. Even now, island kitchens recreate it, reminding us that flavor doesn't come from how much. It comes from how you use what you have. Looking back at these 25 plantation dishes, it becomes clear they were never just food. Each one carried survival through brutal labor, pride through tough living, a lifeline between the old world and the new. In faded kitchens, with bent pots and borrowed spices, Filipino immigrants created meals that were lifelines. Rice and fish, greens and garlic. They mixed hardship with flavor, finding ways to turn almost nothing into something lasting. What's more, their legacy didn't fade. These meals didn't vanish with time. They became part of the pulse of Hawaii, woven into luaus, lunch plates, and family get-togethers. Generations later, people across the islands are still eating the resilience of those before them. Every fried lumpia, every bowl of pancit, every coconut-touched stew says, "We were here, and we cooked with heart." Food told our story, carried traditions, stretched hope. So the next time you take a bite and taste something familiar, something distant, something bold, know this: you're not just eating history, You're sharing it. One plate, one memory, one flavor at a time.